Isn't it fair to admit that materialism, even though it excludes the Creator from its explanations for life and the universe, has achieved great benefits for mankind through science and its various discoveries? So, is our need to acknowledge the existence of the Creator simply to satisfy our spiritual needs, regulate our social relationships, and improve our afterlife? If we prove that most scientists, of any given time, are materialists in their interpretations, isn't this an indication that acknowledging a creator for the universe is not necessary for progress in sciences and discoveries? In fact, didn't the West advance only after they limited the role of religion in their lives? Doesn't this indicate that religion obstructs progress in science? Or is there a fundamental flaw in all aforementioned concepts? Because of the big lie that we've unconsciously accepted? In this episode, we will answer these questions and many more, so stay tuned. Peace be upon you. While sitting enjoying Allah's blessings, we hear a loud noise. We head toward the source of the noise and see a handsome boy called Science, whose face is smeared with black paint, grabbed by a masked person planning to kidnap him and claiming to be the boy's father. Another person accuses the masked man of stealing the boy from him. We listen to each of them and feel that the masked man's voice is familiar, but we don't know who he is. In this episode, we will examine the ancestry of this boy in order to hand the boy over to his true father and unmask the masked man to identify him. Let's perform a DNA test to see who is telling the truth and who's lying. Both men are claiming to be the father of science. The first represents the system of belief in the Creator, which acknowledges that there must be a Creator for this universe and life, who is needed by everything while needing nothing. We took a sample from the system of belief in the Creator, and we found that its knowledge is based on 4 bases, just like the nitrogenous bases in genetic material: innate nature, mind, testimony, and senses. This system explains the universe and life based on input from these 4 bases. These interpretations include unseen things that has been validated by the integration of these bases. We turned our attention to the masked man, but before examining his genetic material, we asked him, "Who are you?" He answered, "My name is Materialism, and sometimes they call me Naturalism." What does materialism or naturalism mean? He said, "It means that I do not acknowledge intangibles in interpreting the universe and life. Instead, I revert everything to matter and explain the universe and life based on material things, nothing else." Because of this, I was able to father my son, Science. So you can say that I am the father of science, or his mother, as Mann, Bendra, and Roy says. The materialist conception of the origin and evolution of the universe is the mother of science. Wait a minute, you don't acknowledge the unseen. Are you atheism? He said, "No. What atheism? I have nothing to do with atheism or the conflict between religion and atheism. I judge everything objectively. Atheism is a predetermined dogmatic position, while I do not have any predetermined viewpoints." But you said that you proceed on the basis of denying the unseen. Isn't this an ideological position? He said, "No, I exclude the unseen because this is what science indicates. Science has proven to me that the unseen is not required." Come on, man. You say that you fathered science after you excluded the unseen from the interpretations of life and the universe. But now you are saying that you excluded the unseen as a result of science. So let's get this straight. Is science a premise or a result? Did he result from excluding the unseen, or did he produce this exclusion? Is he your father, or are you his? The masked man said, "Science and I are one thing, as many scientists believe." It looks like we're facing another trinity. You are the father, Science is the son, vice versa, and both of you are one. Don't you, masked man, notice your confusion in determining your relationship with science? The masked man said, "You can say that science and I have common origins. We revolve around each other. If science shows me something new, I will accept it, no matter what. As per this 2018 paper, The Naturalism of the Sciences." "You don't have any pre-existing judgments?" He said, "No." "Are you ready to go where science takes you?" He said, "Yes." "Are you sure?" He said, "Of course. That's why they call me Scientific materialism. Science and I are one thing. The masked man, trying to show his impartiality and objectivity, continues, "It is not my job to deny or prove the existence of God. This issue does not concern me. Science, including evolution, has not disproven God's existence because it cannot be allowed to consider it, according to Dr. Scott C. Todd in Nature. The thing is that I do not acknowledge that there must be a creator for life and the universe who oversees the affairs of his creation. I will give you an independent interpretation of the universe and life, as Dr. Franklin Harold says. Let me, therefore, state unambiguously that I, like the vast majority of contemporary scientists, see the living world as wholly the product of natural causes." The masked man continued, "I alone can provide convincing explanations through my son, science. And then, if you want to resort to religion for your psychological needs and so-called spirituality, you are free to do so. Keep in mind that I am on my way to solve all problems including psychological issues by controlling neurobiochemistry. Can you, masked man, give us an independent interpretation that does not require the presence of a creator?" "Of course." The masked man did not realize that we were recording his statements and promises. Remember them well, dear viewers, as we go through them one by one. Just as we did with the system of belief in the creator, when we took a sample and found it to have 4 bases, we took a sample from the masked man and examined his fertility. We were surprised at the result. First, excluding the unseen led to the exclusion of innate nature, denying it or contesting its credibility. This is because the existence of a credible innate nature means the existence of a creator who instilled it in people, as we discussed in episode 5. And this is an unseen matter that the masked man rejects. So, the sample from the masked man, materialism, did not include the first element in the system of belief in the creator, innate nature. Second, innate nature is the basis for mental axioms such as acknowledging that every emergent thing has a cause. From these axioms, we can build logical evidence in our discussions as we start with these axioms to reach logical conclusions. Without innate nature, there are no absolute mental axioms which destroys mental evidence. Likewise, as we've seen repeatedly when materialism tried to bridge the gap of the unseen, it denied it produced unseen myths that conflict with the simplest axioms and with necessary truths agreed upon by rational people. So, it tried to persuade people that the flaw was not in its myths, but in their minds, and in what they consider to be axioms. Just as Richard Dawkins and Lawrence Krauss did when they tried to explain the spontaneous creation of the universe from nothing.
It does violate common sense. But as I said earlier this evening, you can't go by common sense. If we could do things by common sense, we wouldn't need physicists.
So they trivialize common sense, a term with no agreed definition, which comes in the context of axioms, i.e., agreed upon things between rational people. So, Dawkins tells you that a universe originating spontaneously from nothing does violate common sense. But as I said earlier this evening, you can't go by common sense. If you could do things by common sense, we wouldn't need physicists. This is the same logic used by Professor Richard Lewontin when he justified the acceptance of scientific assumptions, contradictory to common sense, no matter how absurd they seem. We are forced by our a priori adherence to material causes to create an apparatus of investigation and a set of concepts that produce material explanations, no matter how counterintuitive. So, this is their logic. Materialism and science go hand in hand. Science is sacred. Science discredits mental axioms. Anything discredited by science is invalid. So mental axioms are invalid. Also, according to materialism that relies on evolution in its attempts to explain the origin of living things, the human mind evolved by a set of random changes, so there is no guarantee that it will be guided to the truth. This is what Darwin expressed doubts about. But then, with me, the horrid doubt always arises, whether the convictions of man's mind, which has been developed from the mind of the lower animals, are of any value or at all trustworthy. This is confirmed by Dawkins.
Well, common sense, of course, comes from what was necessary for our brains to survive in the Pleistocene of Africa. So they had to survive. They had to know how to catch a buffalo and how to find a waterhole and how to climb a tree when being pursued by a lion or something. So our brains were never shaped by natural selection to understand either quantum mechanics, the theory of the very small, or relativity, the theory of the very fast. And it's actually an astonishing compliment to the human brain that at least some humans are capable of understanding.
So he tells you, common sense, of course, comes from what was necessary for our brains to survive in the Pleistocene of Africa. So they had to survive. They had to know how to catch a buffalo and how to find a water hole and how to climb a tree when being pursued by a lion or something. So our brains were never shaped by natural selection to understand either quantum mechanics or relativity, and it is actually an astonishing compliment to the human brain that at least some humans are capable of understanding. So, simply he wants to tell you that if you view their claims of a universe emerging from nothing as contradictory to mind and basic axioms, it is because your mind has only evolved to the extent that allows you to survive like other animals, not to realize facts. So, you have to trust those with more evolved minds that allow them to understand the theories that you fail to understand. That's why you view his and Krauss's interpretations about the universe and life as a violation of mental axioms, as if they're saying, do not read the sacred book of the universe. You are not qualified to understand it. We are smarter than you, and we will read it on your behalf. Therefore, don't be surprised when we say that materialism cancels mind and logical evidence. There are three conflicts between the mind and materialism. Materialism has no basis to establish mental axioms. Mental axioms reject absurd materialistic interpretations to fill the gap of the unseen. The mind has no credibility if it developed by chance and randomness and was not designed to know the truth. We discussed important details on this in episode 5 of this series, how atheism contradicts mind and science, and we highly recommend reviewing the episode. So the second source of knowledge, mind and mental evidence, is missing in materialism, while it exists in the system of belief in the Creator. Third, the fever of materialistic skepticism and denial has infected the third source of knowledge, testimony. Past observations and experiences are valuable if we acknowledge that the universe and life are in a state of order, controlled by fixed laws, if we acknowledge that there is consistency in behavior and constancy in laws, which allows us to generalize the results of an experiment or an observation to all other unexamined cases under the same conditions. Thus, human knowledge and experience is cumulative. Because of our masked friend's denial of the unseen, he was compelled to say that the universe emerged accidentally, as stated in Alan Lightman's book, The Accidental Universe, The World You Thought You Knew, which states,
and our universe is just one lucky draw from the hat. In which case we are accidental. We are an accidental universe.
So he tells us that our entire universe is accidental. How can randomness and chance create order, fixed rules, and systems? If you do an experiment and produce certain results, your results and experiences mean nothing to me. As what guarantees that, if I repeat your experiment, I will get the same results? This is only guaranteed under fixed laws and systems, while the randomness of materialism does not guarantee any of this. Therefore, the testimony of others about their experiences and observations are worthless, no matter how reliable or repetitive they are. Consequently, there is no place for cumulative knowledge. When you hear a materialist say, "I'm not convinced until I see for myself," he is trying to stay true to his materialism. But wait. The expectation of fixed laws in the universe is in the innate nature of man, and even in animals. This can be clearly seen when they avoid places of danger, even if they experience it once only. So how does materialism require randomness? By innate nature? Didn't we tell you that materialism doesn't acknowledge innate nature because it is unseen? Materialism also damages the trustworthiness of testimony because moral values such as honesty and scientific integrity have of no value when the Creator is excluded from the explanations of life and the universe, because there is no lab experiment on a materialistic basis to prove that honesty is a good and desired trait. Thus, there is no non-material motive for materialistic researchers to be honest about their claimed research results. Such skewed motives poison the well of scientific research. So, the sample from the masked man, materialism, was missing the third element that exists in the system of belief in the Creator, testimonial evidence. You might say, but you must have found observation, as this is consistent with the masked man's name, materialism. I'll say, observation is not limited to observing things directly, but also includes observing their effects. Many physicists say, The known kinds of matter and energy make up only about 4% of the universe. The nature of 96% of physical reality is literally obscure. They call it dark matter and dark energy. Have you seen it? No. Then why is the acknowledgement of its existence scientific? They said, from its effects, what we observe from the behavior of tangibles necessitates that it must exist. The universe is expanding rapidly, and this expansion requires energy, which we call dark energy. Watch this clip of the physicist Harry Cliff.
But in 1998, astronomers made the stunning discovery that the expansion of the universe is actually speeding up. The universe is getting bigger and bigger, faster and faster, driven by a mysterious repulsive force called dark energy. Now, whenever you hear the word dark in physics, you should get very suspicious, because it probably means we don't know what we're talking about.
So he warns you that the word dark should make you suspect that they don't know what they're talking about. They know nothing about it, yet they believe it exists from its effects. Let's set aside the issue of whether this energy truly exists. What concerns us here is that the scientific community fully accepts, with conviction, the existence of something based on its effects, while our masked friend excluded the existence of a creator, even though his effects, everything in the universe, point to him, as if he's telling us, effects are meaningless. I must see the thing. I must feel it directly. On the other hand, when the masked man needed to fill the gap of the unseen, he made up stories about extraterrestrial aliens that seeded life on Earth, about multiple universes to explain the fine-tuning and so on. He presented us with things which none have observed, directly or through their effects, a clear violation of correct observation. Materialism contradicts the known definition of sensory observation as directly observing something or sensing its effects. Instead, it presents delusions that contradict observation. And so the sample from the masked man was missing the fourth and last source of knowledge that exists in the system of belief in the Creator: observational evidence. So we could not find any source of knowledge in the masked man's sample. Instead, we found him completely infertile. He could not have fathered this handsome boy. Science, which he claims as a son. So both systems, belief in the Creator and materialism, were examined. Before we issue our final verdict, let's take a DNA sample from the boy, Science, to see whose features he inherited. Thus far, we've called him Science for short, because the Arabic term is not one word. It is observational experimental knowledge, which existed before the term science was coined, in a nation other than the one that coined it, as we will see. So, from now on, whether we say science or experimental knowledge, we're talking about the same thing. We took a sample from science and asked ourselves, what is science? The British Scientific Council, after a year of working on a definition, came up with what they claim to be the first official definition of science ever published. What is this definition? Science is the pursuit of knowledge and understanding of the natural and social world, following a systematic methodology based on evidence. Knowledge, understanding, and evidence are all mind-based concepts, but the mind has no credibility according to the fundamentals of materialism. British biologist Thomas Huxley nicknamed Darwin's bulldog, i.e., Darwin's pet dog, because of his intense enthusiasm for Darwin's ideas, defined science as science is simply common sense at its best, that is rigidly accurate in observation and merciless to fallacy in logic. Common sense, which they ended up rejecting. As for logical fallacies, we have seen how the materialistic myth of evolution is the best example for a mixture of compounded logical fallacies. Keep in mind that we have not finished the list yet. We've only reached the 13th fallacy. Empirical science formulates hypotheses and establishes laws and theories, as Dominique Lecour said in La Philosophie des Sciences. Theories. What is the definition of a scientific theory? Let's see according to the American National Academy of Science. Theory. In science, a well-substantiated explanation of some aspect of the natural world that can incorporate facts, laws, inferences, and tested hypotheses. Let's go through the definition. Theory is a well-substantiated explanation. So the mind is required to judge if the evidence is substantial, of some aspect of the natural world that can incorporate facts. In the episode, How Atheism Contradicts Mind and Science, We saw how there are no truths except by acknowledging the Creator, and that denying Him leads to statements such as, "The truth is relative, and there is no such thing as the absolute truth." Laws, which indicate a state of consistency, and fixed cosmic laws, which cannot exist through randomness and coincidence. Inferences, which require the mind and the deduction of intangibles from their tangible effects. And tested hypotheses, with results from the testimonial evidence of the researchers who conducted the research. It is a definition packed full of innate nature, mind, testimony, and observations, including tangible effects of the intangibles, so that our discussion isn't purely theoretical. Let's take an example from experimental science and, while examining it, scrutinize the face of the boy, science. Will we find a resemblance to the features of belief in the Creator, or materialism? In 2007, I began a research expedition with my colleagues in Jordan in the field of wound healing. We started by studying the molecular structure of two substances. Wait a minute. Did we ourselves or did others directly observe the molecular structure of these two substances? No. The molecular structure of a substance is inferred through its observable effects, even when the structure itself is unobservable. This is achieved through analytical and organic chemistry tests. Some research had indicated the capacity of these two substances to help with wound healing. Because the published research on one of these substances was deficient, we verified this property ourselves using an animal sample and following a strict methodology. We published our results in a global scientific journal. We noticed, through the interaction of observation and mind, that there is a common moiety in the two compounds, and deduced with our minds that this substructure may be the reason for their common wound healing property. That is because we believe in the innate principle of causality, that the Creator creates a cause for every emergent thing. We deduced with our minds that other compounds with this common substructure may also have the wound healing property. Some may have other properties that disrupt or weaken the healing property, but the presence of this specific substructure made these compounds better candidates for our experiment. We used a software program to plot the three-dimensional structure of the compounds and ran it for about 40 medicinal compounds, to arrange them according to their similarity to the common moiety that we noticed in the initial two compounds. We started testing the compounds in this order on wounds we caused in animals. How did we learn about the benefits of all the chemical, microscopic, and mechanical tests we used? From the experiments of those before us. Since the universe runs according to fixed laws, we could expect their applicability in our case, so we build upon it as human knowledge accumulates. After a long journey, we proved that two of these compounds do actually help in improving the quality of healed wounds, published these results in a U.S. magazine, and obtained 2 patents for the 2 compounds. But wait a minute. Why do journals publish the results of such experiments? What do these results mean for the rest of humanity? They publish because they all believe in the principle of consistency and in the persistency of laws, which allows others to build upon the results of past experiments and benefit from them. Otherwise, the citations and references at the end of every scientific research have no value if there are no fixed laws and testimonial evidence is discredited as materialism dictates. Every genuine scientific research is based on causal relationships among observed things or their effects. This is built on the conviction that there are facts and laws in this universe, the testimony of other researchers after the necessary authentication, and the use of the mind throughout the entire process. Causality, innate nature, mind, testimony, authentication of the testimony, fixed laws, observations, and effects. Do you see these features in the system of belief in the Creator, or materialism? So, the verdict is out to return the kidnapped boy, science, from the masked man, materialism, to his true father, the system of belief in the Creator. We did this after going through 4 steps, demonstrating the sources of knowledge in the system of belief in the Creator, exposing the confusion of materialism in defining its relationship with science, revealing the breakdown in the sources of knowledge in materialism. Finally, proving that science is based entirely on the sources of knowledge in the system of belief in the Creator. Wait a minute. How did the masked man manage to deceive so many and persuade them that, despite being infertile, he was the true father of science? You will know the answer. if you observe creatures very similar to him, viruses. The sickening virus does not provide any benefit, does not have any means for survival or reproduction outside a live host, and is not classified among living beings. What does it do to reproduce? It hijacks living cells and injects its genetic material into the living cell. This genetic material produces what resembles a copy that inserts itself into the genetic material of the cell. Genetic material readers are then fooled by the viral copy and read it as they read the normal genetic material of the cell and produce more of the virus, which then takes off to invade other cells, corrupt them, and harm them, offering them no benefit whatsoever. This exactly is what materialism does. When we restricted him to his declared starting position, denial of the unseen, all his sources of knowledge collapsed beneath him, leaving him suspended in the air. So, he had to resort to hijacking an integrated comprehensive system. The materialism virus injected his harmful genes into the souls of mankind. These souls are like cells, and the system of belief in the Creator is the original genetic material, with readers to translate into proteins. Souls are innately provided with the system of belief in the Creator. The materialism virus slyly injected its genetic material in souls. The readers came along to read the genetic material which contains the sources of knowledge along with the material from the materialism virus. The output was a mix of beneficial proteins and new harmful versions of the virus. When naive people looked at a person infected with the materialism virus and saw him producing useful science, they attributed this science to the virus as the presentation of his science was mixed with the delirium of materialism, just like the virus genes intermixed with the original genes of the cell. However, upon investigation, you'll find that every good thing that comes from anyone infected with the materialism virus is due to the system of belief in the Creator originally instilled in him. While his evil and corruption is from the materialism virus, it is impossible to find any useful theory or discovery based on pure materialism. Rather, all useful aspects result from the violation of materialism in application. Thus, they are based on stealing from the system of belief in the Creator. It's not scientific to list names of famous materialist scientists and for me to respond with a list of Muslim or non-Muslim believers, like Bacon, Galileo, Kepler, Newton, Maxwell, Max Planck, etc. Rather, the correct scientific approach is to search for the sources of beneficial knowledge in both the materialist and the believer. Show me one useful research based on the conviction that the universe is random, without any laws. Show me any discovery that resulted from the denial of innate principles and mental axioms. You might say, Westerners advanced when they got rid of religion. I ask you, which religion? They got rid of false unseens that contradict mind and innate nature, related by false testimony. They were liberated from falsely restraining the mind. They freed themselves from the God of the gaps concept promoted by the Church. This liberation propelled them forward as they used the innate principles and mental axioms based on the system of belief in the Creator, even while denying them with their tongues. They built upon the achievements of preceding scientists who were not afflicted by the materialism virus. Dear viewers, people are vessels where many inputs intermix and an output is produced. These inputs may contradict with each other. You may find someone claiming a materialistic outlook while contradicting materialism in all his scientific activity, violating the requirement of materialism to ignore innate nature and mind. He may be active in observation and experimentation. In this case, should his discoveries and achievements be attributed to the materialism he claims but ignores in his scientific practice? Imagine a researcher produces research that states, after months of surveying the most famous biologists, I found that most of them lie in their daily lives, which indicates that lying leads to scientific success and excellence. Is that scientific logic or a joke? Only with the zealots of materialism do jokes become science to deceive people, shut down their perception, and limit their thinking to naive superficiality. We are not saying that experimental science is a product of scientists who believe in the Creator, nor are we concerned about the ratio of believers versus deniers. All we're saying is that all useful science produced by any scientist is the product of his commitment, in his research, to the knowledge sources in the system of belief in the Creator, whether he notices or admits this commitment or not. If the naive person who says, most of the scientists are materialists, which shows that materialism is the cause of progress in empirical science, had lived in the centuries when Muslims were the leaders of science, while Europe drowned in ignorance and backwardness, what would he say? What would he say if he read Robert Briffault's book, The Making of Humanity, which refutes the claim that Bacon set the foundations of empirical science? Briffault says, it was under their successors, at that Oxford school, that Roger Bacon learned Arabic and Arabic science. Neither Roger Bacon nor his later namesake has any title to be credited with having introduced the experimental method. Roger Bacon was no more than one of the apostles of Muslim science and method to Christian Europe. In this episode, our goal wasn't to relate science to specific people, but to the system of belief in the Creator, which exists innately in these people, even those infected by the materialism virus, to the point of delirium. You might say, why do you combine odd statements from Lewontin, Dawkins, Krauss, and the like? You believers also have odd statements from your scholars, and I can combine them for you. I tell you, the statements I quote from materialists are the natural result of their materialism. They are an embodiment of materialism rather than an anomaly, while the statements of some scholars in the faith system are clearly anomalies to the system, so their statements represent them personally, not the system. Accordingly, if a materialist scientist says, I do not deny rational axioms and I don't doubt the mind credibility, we say, beautiful. But you have to admit that this contradicts with your materialist ideology, which necessarily leads to the denial of mind and axioms. Now we know how the masked man managed to delude people into believing that science was his child. He pirated science like a virus. Then, to step up the deception, he blackened the boy's face with soot to conceal his true features so that people would believe his wrongful paternity claim. That is why you see them overusing phrases that mix the facts of science with materialist delirium, as if they were the same. In this paper, for example, they list, among the Western science assumptions, the material universe is accidentally assembled from the smallest physical units into larger structures and interactive patterns through the workings of discoverable natural laws, a sentence whose beginning contradicts its end. Accidental assembly is a materialist hallucination. While discoverable laws come from true science, the offspring of the system of belief in the Creator that believes in consistency and persistency. Therefore, dear viewers, the materialism system is nothing but a big lie. Thus far, what I have been calling system is neither a system nor an independent entity. Rather, its accurate description is the materialism virus. The materialism virus has offered nothing but harm to science, just like other harmful viruses. It has destroyed the integrity of many materialist researchers, leading them to falsify their results and resulting in loss of human life, time, and effort. It also distorted the interpretation of scientific results to serve its predetermined goal of denying the true unseens. We've seen shocking examples of that in the episode. Science and homosexuality, and in the models of pseudoscience reviewed in this series thus far. Then the materialism virus harnessed some aspects of science for destruction and aggression. Even the senses were not spared by the materialism virus, as it didn't forbid the forbidden or provide a solid basis for morality. As a result, people abused liquor, drugs, and hallucinogens, so they saw and heard delusions and fantasies. So nothing remains intact under materialism, neither religion, innate nature, mind, testimony, senses, experimentation, nor any integrated system of dealing with existence. And everything falls apart. After all that refer to this great verse, so that your heart can feel it word by word. Obey not whose heart we have made heedless of our remembrance, and who follows his own lusts, and whose affair became a total loss. So, all the claims of our masked friend were lies. He neither produced science, nor did science lead to him. They are not the same, nor do they have common origins. He has nothing to do with science, nor does science have anything to do with him. Also, materialism can't interpret life and the universe, independent of other methods as he claimed from the onset. You, dear viewer, can do this experiment yourself. Ask any materialist about the nature of the relationship between materialism and science, and see for yourself the lies or confusion and how they fail to differentiate between the materialism virus that infected them and the system of belief in the Creator rooted in them. After we separated science from materialism and rescued the handsome boy from his masked abductor, we now need to unveil the masked man. You, masked man, claim to start from the denial of the unseen. So why do we find you resorting to stupid unseens to fill the gap of the true unseen? Why do you talk about unseen extraterrestrials sowing the seed of life, the existence of a mind and will for microbes, endless universes to explain the fine-tuning of our universe, and the universe creating itself? Wait, there's another joke.
So because there's a beginning doesn't imply a God.
It does if the first premise is true, that whatever begins to exist has a cause. It logically follows.
Yeah,
that
but it
therefore-
doesn't. But the cause hasn't got to be God.
Well, remember I gave an argument for thinking that this cause is timeless,
Yes, I know.
spaceless, immaterial, enormously powerful, and personal.
I think it's a computer.
Well, that wouldn't. Computers are designed by people.
No, this is a self-designing computer.
So, this materialist tells you that the universe was created by a self-designing computer. All these are unseen claims, stupid, unseen claims. So we must have the unseen because the story is incomplete without it. Saying that materialism does not accept the unseen is a false statement. You, masked man, lied to us even on this. In fact, you are ready to believe in the unseen. So why don't you submit to the unseen that all sources of knowledge lead to? Why don't you submit to the unseen that we reach through a cohesive, streamlined methodology instead of your stupid, baseless, chaotic unseens? From the start, you claim to be objective and unbiased with no prior judgments, that you go with science wherever it leads. So, why don't you submit to the existence of the Creator as indicated by science and its sources? Here, the masked man shudders to the extent that his mask dropped, revealing his true face. He says, quoting Lewontin, "For we cannot allow any divine foot in the door," and quoting Harold, "We should reject as a matter of principle the substitution of intelligent design for the dialogue of chance and necessity," and quoting Todd, "Even if all the data point to an intelligent designer, such a hypothesis is excluded from science because it is not naturalistic," and quoting Daniel Dennett, "I adopt the apparently dogmatic rule that dualism is to be avoided at all costs. Dualism means the existence of facts other than matter, literally at all costs." The real face has finally appeared. So you, masked man, are nothing but atheism. We kicked you out of the door. You came back through the window with a mask, using the kidnapped boy as a facade to beautify your ugliness. Your promises of neutrality and the struggle between religion and atheism were all lies to cover your truth. You believed the false unseen and disbelieved in the true unseen. So you were among those whom Allah described as, "And they who have believed in falsehood and disbelieved in Allah, it is those who are the losers." You renounced innate nature, discredited the mind, denied rational axioms and natural laws, and distorted the indications of tangible evidence, all in order to deny the Creator. From the start, we recognized you by your voice, but gave you time and tricked you into testifying against yourself. Indeed, you would know them by the distortion in their saying. Yes, materialism is nothing but recycled atheism. So, in this episode, dear viewers, we revealed some very important facts. We corrected the lineage of science and returned him to his true father, the system of belief in the Creator, which is based on innate nature, mind, testimony, and observation in building knowledge. And we discovered that attributing science to materialism is a big lie. Rather, materialism itself is a big lie. It's nothing but masked atheism that can't exist independently or offer any benefit. On the contrary, it's a virus that has hijacked the system of belief in the Creator. Now that we've discovered all this, many measures are needed to correct the situation. We'll leave these corrective measures for next episode, another important one. Stay tuned, peace be upon you.